And we are live. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about the whole problem with Cocoscope at the moment and what we can do to, well, I don't know, prevent this from happening again, or how we can help, or all sorts of stuff like that. And we're going to talk about what we might think the cause of these problems are. Now, Alicia said she would be here, and basically Alicia and Real Raven are the ones that more or less asked for this little hangout, and I think it's a good topic to begin with. I asked Don to join it. I asked I asked Don to join us. He's the one with the two plebs imagery, because he has, I think, a very important bit of insight as well. Something he made.
One of you guys is echoing.
Have you seen that? Modwing, you've seen Toxic Thread said Google will not let her join. She's tried several times.
I'm going to give you another time. See if I can give you. Everything is happening at the same time. Good timing, everyone. Okay, I'll send you the link again. See if it'll work this time, please, Toxic. And if not, I'm going to find another way to deal with that, because I do want you in here. And I did want to say something, but somehow I forgot what I wanted to say. So that's good. Yeah, oh no, that's what I wanted to say. We also have Don, two plebs here, because he has another insight in the whole financial bit that has been going on.
Somebody's echoing. Or is it just on my end?
I think that's just you.
Can everybody mute themselves?
Can you start with muting yourself? Come on, man. I'm trying to say something here. Anyway, so as I was trying to say, Don's here. He's got an insight on the financial bit. This is something that happens to Cocoscope. Cocoscope isn't the first. Cocoscope most likely won't be the last. We'll talk about all these things, and let's see where we go from here. And yeah, I know everyone has muted themselves but me, Real Raven, and I'm not going to mute myself. I know it's silly, but
we've got a celebrity in the chat. Hello, Hannah.
Hannah Wallen. I don't know if that's who's that then.
She's one of the honey badgers.
Oh right, okay. Well, I feel.
Yeah, I invited Hannah. Sorry about that.
Don't be sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Listen, everyone is welcome.
Yeah, Hannah.
And I can do with the exposure because I'm.
Yeah, Hannah Wallen.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Raven, to change the subject, when you're releasing that song she did.
Anyway, Toxic, can you try again? Is the new link working better?
I'm sorry, I have a terrible echo problem, so
Well, according to what I just read, if the echo is showing for just one person, it's probably because you have the stream open in a second tab somewhere. So do you? And you probably do, because I see you typing in the in what you call it, the chat. So maybe you should turn the sound off in your chat window. Or you could log off altogether.
I get the feeling we're reloading to see if that fixes the echo. And if you are correct that he has the stream open somewhere, that's not going to fix anything.
Yeah, no, that's the point. I mean, I have the stream open, which is a recurring joke, because every time when we go live, you can hear me saying, and we are live, and then a few seconds later, you can hear in the background, and we are live, because I forgot to turn off the bloody Hangout. Okay. I'm totally missing what's going on here. So he sounds a little confused. Is Modwin? Now Modwin tries to do and say everything what's going on and is interrupted and all that. Okay. I'm going to Kathy Scope.
Started again.
Hi, Alicia.
It is me. They're blocking me. I'm using my mom's account.
What? That's really weird that you can get in. But I would have had another way to get you in, though. Not in the Hangout itself, but as being part of the Hangout, because, yeah, not going to tell it here. Keep people guessing.
The echo was terrible. I'm sorry. I don't know. I muted myself, so hopefully you didn't get it, but I heard myself a minute later, and apparently it wasn't just a tap.
No, that's about your Hangout.
It wasn't just a tab. It was another window as well, which had another instance of the YouTube video. So sorry about that.
So you had like 3 or 4 of you playing in the background.
Yeah, it was terrible. I had it muted, but there was another one.
Well, there you go. Okay, so the whole talk is going to be about Cocoscope. Sorry, Cocoscope. The demonetization problem going on there, where it may all come from. Now, I did say this pre-stream with the other guys, this is not an anti-Cocoscope stream. Cocoscope is as much a victim as we are all, unfortunately. But I'm going to let the stream more or less be started by Toxic, since she's now finally here, because Toxic and Real Raven requested this stream, and I thought it's a bloody great idea. So having heard Real Raven all the time already, take it away, Toxic.
Okay, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we're seeing is the rollout of what they've done in third world countries for many, many years. It's just soft censorship. They can't, because there's a global initiative to fight censorship, right? To have free press, basically, so-called their free press, right? Not what we would define as free press, but their free press. So they have to do it covertly. And what they found is that if they could cut people off financially, they could slowly silence people. Now, it didn't always work. There was the case of, I can't think of the African gentleman's name right now, where he still had a million people listening to him. They finally had to cut off his radio stream. He was completely broke. So he literally did get a bullhorn and walked through the streets of town, warning people what was happening in his town. So it doesn't stop the people that absolutely need to be stopped by them. But what we're seeing now is they are rolling it out here in America and other places where all they're doing is preventing you from making money. They're not directly censoring you, so it doesn't follow under censorship laws, but they're just going to prevent you from being able to take care of yourself. And sadly, they've chosen, like just a few minutes ago, Democracy Now! Had posted Trump was going to appoint a right-wing, basically like a neo-Nazi. And I finally flat out asked, what do you mean by right-wing? And the only responses I got from everybody on that stream is, did you read the article? Did you read the article? Well, all they said is that because he used to write for Breitbart, that made that woman, her husband, a neo-Nazi, far-right person. So this is going to happen everywhere we go. We're going to be silenced. And who they're going to silence is anybody that is going against the death agenda. So anything that is about population control, anything that is against population control, you will be silenced. You will be silenced. Now, when you start writing a list of things that would fall under population control, then you can find what you are going to be silenced over, and you could avoid it. You can avoid it. I don't know how, but you can avoid it. But that's my 2 takes on it. It's really sad that Cocoscope fell prey to it, but at least to Cocoscope's benefit, and I'm gonna say this, she is just getting rid of all of politics. So you have to admire her for at least being equal in her punishment.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, from what I understood, I had a very small, I sent one email. I got an email back really fast. Then I sent another one, and I never heard from them again.
Yeah.
But what I understood is it's not so much that they want to block political stuff at all. But
Yeah, they don't.
if they don't, everything will be demonetized because payment processors simply will refuse to work with Cocoscope.
Yep.
So if I post something political, everyone else in Cocoscope will be demonetized.
Can I
Yep.
suggest that is an output of Cocoscope, not seemingly, and look, I'm not all that familiar with them, so correct me if I'm wrong, but not seemingly having like a real community guidelines set of restrictions, right? YouTubes are abstract, but they're definitely there. And while we all spend most of our lives trying to figure out what fits within those guidelines, we do know that they are there, even if no one knows what they mean.
Oh, dead air.
Yeah, they're there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting for a second. I always end up hogging the stream when I'm on here, but you're absolutely right too, Plebs, is that her platform really, she really wanted a safe space for everybody to immediately be able to make money. That's what that place was created for. Is that so she's a very attractive woman and she can't make money on YouTube too overloaded. But most attractive women, and I'm not trying to be a dick or whatever, an attractive women will have a certain set of followers that will pay her. And so instead of trying to play the game on YouTube, she created a platform where her followers could pay her directly. And she could make even more money by setting that up for everybody else. So you have, it was the best setup there was. Because the people that love my work for against pedophiles, they quickly went over there, they adopted me, and then were sending me money immediately. So I didn't have to play the game. I didn't have to be compromised. I could be straightforward and honest at all times about the situation we are facing with the pedophile agenda. And you know, they saw me get demonetized. They saw all of that. So I had a really good there that just paid me directly, didn't have to go through a third party. And I think that's why the payment people shut her down, is because they realized there are people like me that are small. I am very small, but my audience was starting to grow and I would be able to afford to get bigger and then to advertise and to get a bigger following. So they realized that the way that she had set it up was a perfect place to expose this disturbing agenda that has been rolled out worldwide. So that's my take on it.
You were pretty much on track already on YouTube with the Alicia Clegg channel, I thought. I was shitposting today about the, just today I found a Slashdot article that proved that they are harvesting organs from the Uyghur Muslims that are interned in the Chinese re-education camps. And I remember when we were starting to pick up steam on your channel doing live streams, we talked about not organ harvesting, but just the actual fact that Muslims are put into re-education camps. And then your channel was closed down the next week or the next few days.
Yeah, it was closed down immediately. Every time that I get close to it's anything, I'm telling you, anything that goes against a death agenda will get you shut down. I sat down and I went totally conspiracy. I wrote down each and every video that was first censored, the order they were censored in, because I kept all of my videos. I have every single video I've ever made. I'm not, trusting anyone with that. And I started to see a pattern. And it was the moment that my channel started picking up speed because somebody, I wish I knew who shared my channel that caused it to grow so quickly. in that short amount of time, because I would love to contact them again and say, hey, let's just stream together, because obviously, but that's all it is you know it, we see it. What do you get censored on is if you go against the death agenda, and you could say the intersectional agenda. But ultimately, everything out there politically right now is designed to cause a fracture in society so that they can finally cull us down to a place where they want us to be, and then they can micromanage our lives. That's what they want.
It is kind of funny, though, because if I look at the whole thing going on, I mean, and now it's Cocoscope, and we're talking about this because it is happening to Cocoscope. Cocoscope got started because, well, Piper wanted to have a free expression site, the whole idea of free expression combined with free speech, because she was all for that. I find it amazing that a site that is more or less based on soft porn might get demonetized, not because of the porn, which is often the issue, but because of political opinions. And we are seeing this throughout nearly all of, well, obviously between all of the Silicon Valley outlets out there, like Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. They don't like the political speech, and they try to break down on it. And I remember, I think not too long ago, when they started crashing down on American political bullshit, or political YouTubers. Sorry, I have to be nice. I was like, yeah, I know why. Because 2020 is like less than a year away. So they're already starting to close down on this. Vox, a Spanish party, is being removed from YouTube because, well, they're political. Well, obviously, they're a political party in Spain. And it's almost as if the powers that be, let's conspiracy theory 101, are totally in the game of making everyone believe that there is only one opinion. The Bolshevik mentality. I know I say this a lot, but the Bolshevik mentality. I invited Don, though, because he had a very, to me, interesting view on not the why, but especially on the how.
So I guess that's my intro to run my mouth for a while. So the how is somewhat attached to the why. I know it's not in the video series as it stands, and I really should finish it, but I know my channel's going to go dark real quick here because I'm moving. So the hope is it'll finish during that time. So I'm going to spoil a little bit here, but what are you going to do? So there is a thing in the United States called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and they control or have some control over effectively every bank account in the United States, as well as every bank and every payment processor, and a few other things that peripherally attach to banks, right? And so generally speaking, they set the rules for who is allowed to do what with money. And so when in 2014, they established a new office whose name I summarily forget, though I do actually have up here right now, somewhere or another. But that's not it. The Consumer Bureau, or Consumer Protection Bureau. And the Consumer Protection Bureau was established under Barack Obama and seemingly established entirely because it's the only thing they've ever done for what was called Operation Choke Point. And the premise of Operation Choke Point was, well, if we can't shut these people up, then maybe we can just make sure they can't participate in society because they can't have bank accounts. They can't trade with anybody. They can't send or receive money. And so originally, this pissed off even the left because of the people listed was in the original listing, porn stars and that sort of thing. And let's face it, if you're targeting porn stars, then of the people listed was the original listing. They threw on with it. So what they did is they just deactivated porn star accounts, which you may recognize from a fairly recent phenomena of deactivating alt-right bank accounts, right? And so what they would do is effectively go to the banks and go, look, you're dealing with unsavory people, and that means that you probably are going to have legal problems. And if you're probably going to have legal problems, then certainly we can't, the FDIC as a whole, cannot insure your bank. And so the banks went, oh God, don't uninsure us, because if you get uninsured as a bank in the United States, you're not a bank. And so subsequently, Vox published a bunch of articles. I mean, really, a lot of the wild left was very upset about this. And then all of a sudden they stopped for a while. Now, when we get to censorship at like the YouTube level, or what is currently going on with Cocoscope, the way that this pans out is the banks go to either the payment processors or the individual company with the bank account and go, look, you're dealing with unsavory people, and if you don't stop that, then we're going to have to terminate your bank account. And one way or another, this works itself over to the individual companies providing media. And so if you go look at the video series, I detail that the original adpocalypse happened at the exact time that YouTube set up Google Pay, right? Or that Google set up Google Pay. And by exact time, I mean, they entered negotiations to set up Google Pay. The FDIC said, well, we're not so sure it's going to happen. The adpocalypse happened, and all of a sudden Google Pay was approved by the FDIC. And it's exactly in that way. And so at the exact same time, or in the middle of that negotiation, the original adpocalypse happens, so that people, that YouTube is not dealing with, quote, unsavory people anymore. It very much looks like Operation Choke Point from the jump, except we're doing more of it and in more places. And this also explains why the payment processors are doing this sort of thing to Gab, to Subscribestar, to basically everyone, right? And what's exceptionally interesting is that even Bitcoin wallets have been deplatforming people the moment they get FDIC insurance. And by the moment, I mean within 30 days. And it's usually 30 days beforehand, which is during the time that Bitcoin wallets are negotiating to get their accounts insured by the FDIC. During that time frame, they deactivate all the people that are bad people that go against whatever agenda you want to go with. And if you go watch the videos, there's a long explanation of the who the bad people are, but that's at this point 5-year-old information. So there's nothing to have stopped them from changing it. There is no governmental agency to go to. This is a private company, and specifically a subsection of a private company that is given authority by the US government to determine who's allowed to be a bank, and for that matter, a payment processor. Now, maybe there's some other explanation for this that is all-encompassing, but I can't imagine what it is.
Well, here's the thing. This is something that happens with American legislation all the time. And it's not surprising that it happened with Operation Choke Point, because Operation Choke Point was designed to control communications, and it was designed to control people's activities and everything. And initially it was sort of the underpinnings of it were sold under the guise of protecting the public from payday loans and protecting the public from terrorism. But so was the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act actually ended up being completely abused and leading to a great deal of surveillance of ordinary citizens that was completely unsavory. And then you also had even legislation that sounds like it's going to be completely 100% benevolent, like Bush's No Child Left Behind Act. That actually ended up being the Any Child Who Doesn't Fit In Gets Left Behind Act. And it created or exacerbated a school to prison pipeline that predominantly affects poor, minority, and disabled boys. It affects girls as well, and it affects girls in ways that are very unexpected. Particularly when they engage in behavior that you usually only see from boys. But at the same time, it's that same thing. and the legislators take good intentions or well-meaning intentions and turn them into a blanket piece of legislation or a blanket policy or a policy that is named something benevolent, but then ends up actually being a means of grabbing more government control over the lives of everyday citizens. And that's what we're seeing here. One of the things that's really bad about this is Operation Choke Point itself is supposed to be over. It's supposed to be done and over with. Like there was a lawsuit, there were all kinds of things, and then it's supposed to be gone, and it's still being carried out essentially.
Before we go into the American nitty-gritty, let me just reiterate a question that I asked in the pre-stream, and I'd like two plebs to answer to it, or Hannah. Why is it so applicable to the whole world? This is an American insurance company. Why is it applicable to the European banks?
Most likely because they need to do business in the United States as banks in order to be able to survive. And
but that implies also that American banks are bigger and more powerful than German banks. That they say, okay, we're not going to work with Deutsche Bank anymore. We don't need you.
Well, that seems to be the case. That's one of the reasons why this kind of abuse of power is so bad, because it does have an international effect. And whether the banks are bigger or more powerful, I'm not so sure that the statement necessarily reflects that as it does how much influence they have on the way things get done around the world. And there are a lot of ways in which the rest of the world follows America, and there are ways in which America follows what other countries are doing as well. But when you take something that we're influential in and do something bad with it, that bad influence is going to echo all the way around the world.
And before two plebs wanted to say something, just one thing. I wonder, is there an Icelandic bank we could deal with?
Okay, so yeah, I knew that was going to be said, and the answer to that one is going to be no as well, for the very same reason. Because Iceland may have protected its civilians against the stupidity of its bankers, but I doubt Iceland will, risk the well-being of their civilians over people in other worlds. I mean, come on. Iceland is basically a big city.
Can we stop the abstracts for a moment and get to some concretes as to why this is a problem for other countries? The first and most important is what Hannah was touching on, which is to say when you're dealing with the FDIC, you're not dealing with a bank in the U.S. You're dealing with all banks. So when the FDIC says, stop talking to this person, all of the banks in the country go, well, I guess we're not talking to that person. So when you piss off them, you lose access to the American market in any way that is even remotely reasonably calculable. Sure, you could trade Bitcoin or something with Americans, but that's it, right? That's the end. That's all the interaction you get forever until the FDIC decides that you're a good boy who didn't do nothing anymore. And then
you might not be able to trade Bitcoins with Americans either, because think about it. How are they going to buy them? And how are they going to cash them in?
Well, so
what are they going to spend to get them?
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah, sure.
Did you read the article on Facebook's introduction of a new cryptocurrency?
Yeah. We'll get there in a minute and why that's not as panic worthy as everybody seems to think it is. But before we move to there, the Bitcoin thing, the FDIC, whether they intend to or not, has not currently stopped your ability to purchase Bitcoin. So Bitcoin moves you into the third-party currency state, right? So until the banks in general say, okay, no more buying Bitcoin for anybody,
which they could do at any time.
And they could, but they haven't yet. So in the meantime, what you've got is Americans buy Bitcoin with American dollars. Whomever buys Bitcoin with whatever's dollars. They trade the Bitcoin, then the American sells the Bitcoin for US dollars, right? Or whomever sells it for whatever currency. On the other hand, to the other concrete here that absolutely matters, and I completely forgot what my train of thought was there. God damn it. This is why I didn't want to get
That was great.
Why can't you just go to another bank was the original question here, right? So The other thing that is going on is that the FDIC is not just influencing banks. Through banks, they're influencing other things. So PayPal is being brought up in the chat right now as having already punted people off. Well, here's the deal. PayPal is a payment processor unto itself. So the FDIC reaches down to the payment processor and they say, hey, you're dealing with unsavory people. And so they're not so much only affecting banks. They're affecting all monetary transactions. And the way that that pans out to things like YouTube and Cocoscope is that they reach down and they say, dear payment processor, go tell whoever it is that you're dealing with that they need to stop dealing with unsavory people or you're not going to deal with them. And the payment processor goes over to those people and says, look, get rid of this guy or we're not going to deal with you anymore. And this has happened with MasterCard, PayPal, Stripe, and whatever the other one is.
And actual bank accounts. But there's a list of people that now have no access to feeding themselves. Like they can't do anything. What do we do about that?
That's a different level, right? That's like a personal level. They actually target people personally. But my question was on the big systemic level. Do they already do this? Do you think they already do this, or they plan to do it with YouTube, or is Google just too big to be attacked like that?
My standing theory is that from the time that Google Wallet has come into existence, they have been doing this with Google.
Yeah,
but I mean, we don't necessarily yet see a complete Kristallnacht kind of burn and throw away like we have on Cocoscope. Modwayne, you shared the link earlier, and it was news to me because I checked on my Cocoscopes channel. It actually states specifically on the 14th of July, Reichskristallnacht, all political channels have to be deleted, or the channels have to delete their political content. Okay. No more political content allowed.
Can I answer that?
I'm going to talk a little bit now because the Cocoscope bit is important, and I understand why Toxic and Real Raven came last week by shouting this is happening. I think one of the reasons why you might not see that message on your Cocoscope, Real Raven, is because most of your work is not political, even though it has a definite political influence. But whenever I post it under the header political. So yeah, they're talking about people like me. So Cocoscope is going to remove all political content. It's not that I can't monetize myself. They're going to remove it, because if they don't remove it, payment processors are now saying, okay, you know what? I'm not going to pay for that one. Payment processors are now saying, no, you have that one, so I'm not going to pay you at all. This is as if YouTube would lose all monetizations because of political posters.
Yeah.
Cocoscope is being played.
Well, it's not just Modwayne, it's not just like only political people. Like, so I watched some Gen Zer put together a compilation of YouTube people talking about what YouTube is doing, and they're throttling anyone and everybody that, even if you like don't have a political channel but you don't use PC terms, that they're throttling them as well. So it's just like a manifestation. So
but I think that's a different dimension, though, isn't it? I mean, throttling demonetization is one thing, but completely removing, that's like complete burning.
Not so much a different dimension in the way of whether they're. I mean, YouTube is not doing this only out of financial reasoning. YouTube, Alphabet is actually doing this out of an ideological reason. That's why whenever they start banning people because of certain forms of speech, they always hurt the people that started to complain about it. It's right-wing people are doing this. Boom! And suddenly half of the left-wing platform is gone as well because, hey, they're doing the same thing. YouTube is stupidly not paying attention to what they're doing.
Can I suggest that there's some really enlightening stuff in the court transcripts about Operation Choke Point that may explain some of the questions that you all have, right? So Cocoscope killed all political channels. They are going after people who are not using PC terms. So what we actually know about Operation Choke Point is that when they enforce this sort of thing, they're usually doing it somewhat in the abstract. Yes, occasionally they will go after specific people, but they're usually doing it more in the abstract. So what's fairly likely to have happened to Cocoscope is that their payment processor, most likely, came down to them and went, we're either going to shut you off or you're going to stop all of these bad political people that you have. And Cocoscope, under the pretense that it was originally set up as, which is to say, well, hey, just come down and say whatever you want, said, okay, well, what that means is we can't have politics because I'm not going to support just one political ideology. Therefore, no politics. And so they probably went back to the payment processor with that and went, well, how about we just get rid of politics then? And this is the deal, is that the whole intent of Operation Choke Point is that everyone along the way claims this, whatever censorship they're doing, as their own idea. They defend it themselves without having to say, well, the bank told me to. Well, the payment processor told me to.
Okay,
well,
I'm going to interrupt you. This is where I'm going to interrupt you, because I did have talks with Cocoscope, not a lot, obviously, but the message I got was quite clear. This is not us. We are given a choice. Either everyone dies or we cut off a small piece.
Yeah.
They use those words, obviously, but that is what it boils down to.
And that's exactly the way that it ends up working. I would suggest that mostly what Cocoscope is doing is trying to be as fair as possible, given the choice they were given.
Yeah.
So it says online everywhere that this Operation Choke Point doesn't happen anymore. But Hannah, are you saying that they still use it? They're just...
It seems to still be the guidelines they're following, and it seems to have overspilled its original boundaries by a long shot, because originally it was not supposed to necessarily target politics, but originally it did say things like they could exercise their discretion a bit with regards to racism and other social justice initiatives. Or other social justice issues. And I think what's happened is, and this happens a lot in American government as well, a policy is written, it runs its course, it is ended, but the department or agency or other entity for which it was created continues to use it because they don't have new policy that says don't do this anymore. And or they have built up within the employees in that department or agency an agreement with the policy that they have built up a loyalty to the policy, or they find it useful, so they continue to follow the guidance that the policy had. There'll be the same thing with things like the education department's Dear Colleague letter and any other kind of policy like that. They'll continue to follow it until they're told not to, and forcibly.
Question to Hannah, just on the topic of the category politics. That's a very kind of fuzzy thing as well. I mean, you could argue that even the men's rights movement is a political movement. You could argue
it's absolutely political. It's political because it's a response to discriminatory law and policy. Anything that is a response to something the government does is political.
Yeah.
So
if
we would be under threat.
Definition, you can go even further, as the feminists say. The personal also is political. So like your life choices might be viewed as a political thing. So one thing that Cocoscope and maybe also the FDIC or whatever they're called is an actual definition of what is political. What
that's going to be
into the forbidden speech kind of category.
I think that's going to be a side issue, in that anything that we allow in terms of government control over public political discourse is going to get abused. So even if we made a very strict limiting definition, they would find a way to make things fit into it that don't. Mm-hmm. And it would get abused.
It would be an attack point as well, like from the point of like countermeasures or propaganda, to say, by the way, you can't talk about X, Y, Z anymore, and people will start to scratch their heads. And why can you not talk about like relationships, for instance, or let's say the the wage gap or whatever. Can't talk about that anymore.
Well, yeah,
that's
exactly.
the point.
All you have to do is label something propaganda, and it's seen as a discrediting thing. And even though propaganda is a real thing, it really does exist. It doesn't take much to falsely use the term to try to shut somebody down.
You know what propaganda is? It's just a biased flavor of a certain expression of a policy expression. That's what propaganda is. It's just a bias in one direction,
Right. It's basically advertising, political advertising.
This is something where I am going to come in, though, because this is to tie it back to one of my pet peeves, so to speak. This is the problem that we're seeing not only in the Western world. We see this in the the whole of the Western world, but part of the non-Western world as well. Certain viewpoints are basically unallowed to be. I'm sorry, John, but some viewpoints are basically no longer allowed to be shared. This is Bolshevik tactics. I know I've said this. I'll explain it later for those who want to. The real problem isn't that this is happening. The real problem is where it is coming from, because it nearly always comes from authoritarians. Now, this particular stretch came from left-wing authoritarians. I mean, it's Barack Obama who brought this law, and it's well overused. Let's be honest on that. But at the same time, one can wonder whether it is overused or whether it's indeed used as intended, because Obama used different strategies to try and silence right-wing voices, not even right-wing voices, Republican voices. And what we are seeing now is that this is now being used to try and silence certain political voices. It's not just men's rights activists, it's not just pro-life abortion issue people, it's not just build the wall people, it's not just limited migration people. Everything that doesn't fall what currently goes as extreme left-wing rhetoric is being silenced.
Well, can I suggest that it's not even that, right? Because that dynamic, it makes sense and it's easy to look at on a surface level. But the anti-war left, who think whatever you want of them, but the thing that they mostly do is talk about how war is bad.
Yeah,
they were notoriously silenced under this. And so it's not so much whether it's left or right, but whether or not it's against the powers that be.
Yeah, I'm going to give John credit for this one. This is not about left or right. This is about authoritarian or liberal. Did I say it right, John?
And now sorry, I had to unmute myself. Sorry. Yes, you did. So, I was clacking a lot on the keyboard, and I know that annoyed you, so I'd muted. Yes, that's the thing, because the left used to be, in countries like the UK, used to be the people against over there in governments. Not anymore, but used to be.
Can I suggest there's one more dynamic of this that is talked about a little bit in the videos, and why I will so heavily lean on the FDIC answer? Pretty evidently, if the vaguely left-wing press printed an article about something that offended the sensibilities of whomever it was that was in charge, and I forget his name right now. I don't remember his name. But the guy, Mark Pierce, there we go, that offended Mark Pierce or one of his subordinate sensibilities. And Mark Pierce is the guy that is in charge of the Consumer Protection Bureau. Offended his sensibilities or one of his subordinates. The deplatforming rolled down almost immediately after. And you can track this based on when articles came out versus who was deplatformed. And this unto itself also explains why when people get hit pieces, like, for example, Black Pigeon Speaks, you have a roughly governmental turnaround time to deplatform them.
And it's scary because it seems that they've been doing this for quite a while. And obviously they started with the deplatforming and demonetizing and actually banning people on the fringes. But ever since the... what's his name? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the name now. The big guy, forgot his name.
Obama?
No,
Alex Jones.
Alex
Jones.
Ever since Alex Jones, everything seems to have been going at a slightly faster pace. They've been blocking, destroying more channels. But if you look at what people like Alex Jones said, if you put the Young Turks against that, I mean, they're both as far to their fringe as you can be. But one of them is a preferred partner and the other one has been removed.
You got it.
It goes way back to how Alex Jones started. Sorry. I was saying it does go back to the beginning of how Alex Jones started. When Alex Jones started, he was a lot more trustworthy in what he was doing, and he was sticking up for the little guy. And then it looked like to me that Alex Jones got compromised and became more of controlled opposition. But then he threw them all for a loop when he all of a sudden asked people to vote for Donald Trump and then had him on his show. And then the next thing you know, we're to yesterday where he's being accused of sending child pornography.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
And this is, indeed bullshit. So this is more about authoritarian than left versus right, though it seems to be moving along with the left-right dichotomy that's being created by people like Alphabet, like Google, like YouTube. And they're okay with playing with that because, I mean, YouTube lost 70 billion. There are countries that don't have that much money.
Oh.
And I want to point out real quick with the Alex Jones thing so people know. He's been accused of sending child pornography, but he was actually sent child pornography and alerted the authorities to the fact that it was sent to him. And it's documented, so it's not just, a he said, somebody else said situation. Somebody tried to take him down using child pornography to frame him. So somebody hates Alex Jones so much that they were willing to hurt and exploit children to try to take him down.
It really seems to be an old trick, associating people with other things by, it's almost psyops, isn't it? You send them stuff, you involve them with...
It's basically by association. You have this, therefore you must be wrong. And the
you have to manufacture this. Sometimes you have to manufacture the association. You don't just wait for it to happen. You actually manufacture it.
Well, that's what they're doing. I mean, I'm sending you child porn, therefore you have child porn. See, you have... And I will tell everyone that you have it.
Or John Hembley.
That I'm the one that sent it to you.
Another example, John Hembley. He was attacked by some leftist on the gaming conventions, and he got banned. The guy got banned as well, but he got banned. For being attacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a 50s era Communist Party of the U.S. Tactical message that way. I didn't say it for the first time ever. I didn't say it first. But anyway, there's this 50s era thing that went out to the Communist Party of the United States, which says, find a thing that is universally perceived as bad, and then associate whoever we don't like with them through whatever means necessary. And through that, you can just determine that they are bad because of whatever association that you have created, and just keep saying it until people believe it.
Yeah, it's basically like Washington Post posting an article talking about how people get radicalized because YouTube, and then a few months later they post an article slightly bigger on how someone has produced articles on how YouTube is radicalizing people, whilst not mentioning that someone indeed was you yourself.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Can I ask a question? Modwayne, the one thing that, my starting point was, and maybe we shouldn't discussed this on this stream. Maybe we should have another stream. But I felt fairly black-pilled when I read the whole thing. But my whole point is, the mail thing is, let's solve this problem. Where do we move the political content creators when they are kicked off Cocoscope? Where do they move their content? And it was something I discussed with John as well. So I don't know, this might not be the stream for it. We might just state the facts,
We could mention stuff here as well. I did look into that as well.
It might also be too early, it's only 15:15, so we could do another. I don't try to steer the stream or anything, but I think there is probably alternative platforms. But one thing that, and I think John, you should also unmute yourself.
Real. Do you want me to answer, or are you going to continue asking?
Yeah, no. You answer first, and then I'll give you some, if I'm allowed, give you some detail.
Okay, so because I have looked into what other platforms there are that we can go to, and the funny thing is, we don't actually really have to leave Cocoscope. They can kick us if they want to, and they will if it's going to cost them their bottom line. But this is not against Cocoscope. This is not against YouTube. I'm not leaving YouTube. They might kick me, but I'm not leaving YouTube. Alternative platforms obviously are places like BitChute. BitChute being a really good one, were it not for the fact that
the video is shit.
Well, it's a crappy platform, to be honest. I mean, the only thing good about it is that it is completely free. I'm looking forward to
maybe that's not a good thing,
because he's trying to make something, and basically what he said, and I assume that when he says it, he means it, is that once you are able to produce on his platform, he will not remove stuff unless ordered by a US court.
Yeah. So I think you're jumping to the solutions already, but I think before we jump to solutions, and I think that's a good thing to have a list of alternatives. I think we should look at the requirements first. And one thing that John and I discussed was, John thinks it's not a good idea, and I think it is a good idea to move to the same thing, because then you're just making another area of attack. That you're just moving the target. And then that's the next thing they take down. So it's better if everybody kind of moves to different platforms. Now, what I thought was, you're not really, I thought more in the activist kind of sense that, if, everybody has to leave on the 14th of July, maybe leave before that, set a date, and then everybody goes to platform X, And then the other thing about the attack angle, there's a couple of thoughts we had. One is, if you put all your eggs in one basket, and that is your monetization, your hosting, maybe your subscription feed and all that, and have it all on the same platform, like, for instance, YouTube, you're much more attackable than if you decentralize it and say you have your monetization on platform X, you have your videos on Y, and you have your subscriptions on Z. So that if they take one down, you can just replace it with something else. It's kind of a mouse and cat kind of game. And so it's actually better not to monetize with the platform. And rather, that's another thought that we had, that if you pay the platform for hosting the content, and you do not ask the platform to charge the viewer on your behalf, then you become their customer, and it's not that you're just like an intermediary between them and the viewers. They collect cash from the viewers, and then we don't need you, we give you other content. Strategy.
Hold on a second. If you all want to pay me to host your video content for you, you tell me when. I will start setting up a video sharing service. On the other hand,
there already is one. In Japan, there is a video.
Yeah, it's Vimeo. Vimeo.
And here's the shtick, right? I mean, you're talking about a nickel per view. I mean, basically, you're talking about a nickel per view. So for your Philly D's, your Keemstars, your PewDiePies, you're talking about them cutting me 6 or 7 figure checks for every video, right? On the other hand, presumably they'll make lots of money from this.
No, it's not
a number of means, but you're going to have to cut me 6 or 7 figures per video on upload. right?
Well, it would depend. You would obviously have, and there is platforms like that. You obviously have tiers, right? So first 1,000 videos you pay whatever $6.99, or first 1,000 views you pay $6.99 per month. If you go beyond, you get into a different bracket, $15, and so on. So you can stagger that, and you could obviously guard against. Okay, gets too much, gets viral, can't afford it. Okay,
that's not
cap it off.
That's not how it works.
You could make it work like that.
That's not.
There's Vimeo. Does anybody? I have a Vimeo channel. Does anybody have a Vimeo channel?
I have a Vimeo, a daily motion.
Alicia, I have seen the price structure, and it exactly works like that. They have a 3-tier system, don't they?
Yeah, but I think the problem is that too many. So, what made YouTube great? I'm sorry to say this, is the fact that you can watch videos for free. And
sure.
too many people's content is behind a paywall, so it's pointless. So really, to pull people in, like you're talking about the difference between cable TV and free TV. If you think about it, right? So the free TV, everybody gets the free TV, and then you have the specialty stuff on the cable TV. Or you think about free radio, right? Radio was free. That's why it was so big. Is the point, in fact, is that most people cannot afford entertainment. They can't afford it. And they can't afford, if I were to support every single channel that I like, I would go broke.
Sure.
I would go broke. It's impossible. So I think that's where you start forming coalitions. But the fact is that YouTube is so great because it's free, because you can go and watch people, listen to them for free, and you don't have to pay.
Well, Cocoscope is free as well. There's a lot of platforms that are
exactly.
free. Free as in beer. But all I'm saying is that they are also vulnerable, and Google just has enough cash in the back end and enough power that they cannot so easily be persuaded, but to do a certain thing.
I think we're missing. I think what Two Plebs and Hannah have stated about Operation Choke Point, which I've never even heard about, which surprises me because I'm a conspiracy person through and through. So I don't know how the hell I'd never heard about it, but I'm reading over it and it scares the living shit out of me. So it doesn't even matter if we come up with another fucking platform. They're going to shut our asses down. I mean,
that's the problem.
Because I'm looking at it. They don't want you to talk about pharmaceutical cells,
but you don't need
any kind of surveillance.
But here's the thing.
Firearms, fireworks.
They targeted a bunch of stuff.
But you do not need to come up with another platform. You just rent one, you use one, and then if that doesn't work out, you move on to the next. So the strategy is to minimize the attack, the area of attack. That's the strategy.
There's only so long that you can
Hannah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on the stream, because the honey badgers, to a point, you've done it. So could you talk a bit about that?
Well, there's only so long you can be a moving target before you're going to get hit. And like we've had some experiences with, being censored over different things on YouTube, and I get censored on all kinds of places. I'm shadow banned 6 times now on Reddit, I think, for talking, 4 of them at least, for talking about a specific domestic violence case that didn't have a gag order on it. It's just that I was criticizing a local domestic violence victims advocacy agency, and they didn't like it, and they kept reporting me to the admins at Reddit, and I kept getting shadow banned. So I mean, these are things that we're not exempt right now. That we just haven't been big enough to get targeted. Honestly, we get ignored a lot, believe it or not. The men's rights community likes us, and we've had a lot of communication. We've drawn some attention to the movement, and hopefully drawn more attention to the specific issues the movement represents. But we've mostly flown under the radar, I think, partly because the left wing, or I don't want to necessarily say specifically anti-men's rights, but the establishment media doesn't want to give us, any publicity. And I think they don't criticize us as much, because if they criticize us, people would come and look at us, and then they would see what we actually stand for, and that would be bad for the establishment's perspective. So I don't know that necessarily I could give you a formula for avoiding the Operation Choke Point shutdown. What really needs to happen is we've got to turn the ship around, and that's a bigger, harder job.
That's a bigger thing. But just in the context,
I'm going to try and interrupt you now, Real Raven, because this is kind of the whole point I was hoping to make tonight. We can go to other platforms. We can keep moving around, but in the end, whoever they is, because they is a vague term, but okay, I'm going to use it anyway. They will go after us because of what we say. Not because whether we are right or wrong, but because they don't want the message out there, whatever the message is. And at this point in time, it seems to be, well, actually, it's anti-authoritarian messages they don't want. Whether it's left or right. I mean, we might sound that we're more right than left. 30 years ago, I was considered left. I still consider myself left in a lot of things, but I can't identify with what the left is doing now. The same thing. I know plenty of people who are left-wing who are unable to identify with what the left is doing now. Funny enough, that's not even the point. The reality of it is that we can go wherever we want. We can start our very own platform. Today, we put money together, we get coders together. Tomorrow, we have it online. The day after tomorrow, our internet provider is pulling out. Because shit like that already happens. We can't keep moving around. I mean, yeah, of course we can, but they will keep coming after us. So my advice to places like Cocoscope is try to find other monetization platforms. Don't talk to local banks. Talk to a bank in countries which doesn't have a central bank from a certain type. Talk to Russia, for example. Now it's going to be a little bit more work. I mean, but look at what happened to Subscribestar. Look at what happened to Gab when they came out. Look at what happened to BitChute. How many times have they been trying to get BitChute down? So
and that's the situation too. It's we're in a situation where, like, all we can do is temporarily present a moving target, and then as soon as we move to the next platform, that puts the target on that platform, and the next, and the next, and the next.
So at a certain point in time, it is time that the people themselves, and we are the people. I mean, this is why Jörg Sprave.
We are the world.
This is why Jörg Sprave started the YouTube union, the creators union. So I'm part of it. I'm not big enough, but sure. Well, at a certain point in time, we, the people, need to stand up and say, you know what? We're going to take the government to court. We're going to take MasterCard to court because they are destroying our livelihoods. They are destroying our freedoms.
So, not to blackpill all of you horrendously. First of all, the YouTube union won't do anything because the simple reality is there's a lot of people going, well, we're going to be mad if you don't do what we want. And YouTube's going, yeah, but we don't get any money if we appease you. Therefore, YouTube union fails. On the other hand, the Consumer Protection Bureau, or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, I think, which is what we've been talking about this whole time in relation to what it is that I've been saying. And again, to spoil future videos, was taken to court, was said to be unconstitutional by those who took them to court. And the Supreme Court of the United States said, no, they aren't. So there's no taking this to court. That battle is already lost. It has already happened, and we already failed. Because SCOTUS said, nah, it's cool. So if you want this sort of thing gone, it's not so much that we're going to have to vote in people to get rid of, Mark Pierce and his little cronies out there watching what everybody does, so much as we're going to have to get rid of the FDIC. And this is one of those things that in American politics, it's been around too long. And so basically everyone thinks it's a good idea. And it doesn't matter whether or not it's provably a bad idea.
But
they insure my investments. How bad could it be?
we need to leave that to you, Yanks. We have no say in this. Europeans.
You're not wrong there.
I disagree with that. We do have a say in that. This is not just America. We in Europe have our own problems. And these problems come from the same source.
Yeah.
And this is why Subscribestar had a problem. Now, they came out of it, and I wonder how they did it. But Subscribestar came out of trouble.
There seems to be one of two ways to get away from this. One, find a payment processor that is so small that the FDIC doesn't know it exists or even care, and then give them all your business. Or, by the way, is international and is willing to tell the FDIC, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is what Subscribestar did.
Would you, Modwayne, just question, would you agree or disagree or make an opinion on whether you think it's a good idea what John and I came up with it to decouple platform from payment processor and have that separate?
But isn't that what we already have? I
mean, yes and no. I mean, in YouTube you don't, right? You have super chats, for instance, and they go through YouTube.
Yeah, but, I mean, who is currently still making money on YouTube?
Jean-Francois Jarry-P and he still makes super chats.
Most people are making money not so much because of the chats; they're making money because of Patreon, PayPal.
Yeah, they have separate systems. That's true.
Yeah, but Patreon's shutting people down for political reasons too, though.
Yeah,
that's why we went to Subscribestar.
PayPal and Patreon are moving the same way because of the same FDIC thing. That's why I recognized what Don was saying, and that's why I wanted Don to be in here, because he did do some research into that. So I mean, I've seen what he did, so I know what he told me. I'm pretty sure he hasn't told everyone everything he knows, though. So that's why
you are correct. So, there is always more.
So on top of that, it just sets up requirements. Right? I mean, whatever the solution, maybe one of the requirements is if you do not involve the platform in the payment, then you have to they have to recoup their expenses, and that's why somebody has to pay them. And I think the safest way is to the content creator pays, not the audience.
Yeah, but
you're probably right.
That still won't help, because if I were to tell you, you know what, you can subscribe to me. This is, for example, what Steven Crowder is doing. You can subscribe to them. They will then make content, and they will put the content out. They have their own website. I mean, they don't only put out stuff on YouTube, they put out stuff as well. They are still at risk of being attacked. True. They are still being attacked.
And for one thing, the thing that is being done with Patreon is they're being told whose money they can and cannot accept, right? So they're basically being told you can't, and who they can pay with whose money. So they're told they cannot accept money to pay, for instance, Richard Spencer, because they don't like his ideas. Okay, so right. You can't pay Patreon to give money to Richard Spencer. Yeah. And it's easy to get that through people, because his ideas are not going to be popular. But then they start applying it more and more. And you can't pay Patreon to pay Sargon now.
Right.
And Sargon is not a white supremacist. He is, you can't even relate him to that. But factually.
It does go into the bottom line, though, because it makes it unacceptable for if you know about this and you know some of these people, then for me it's unacceptable to funnel any money through Patreon on principle because
but the thing is, the thing is, if they can do it that way, right? They can do it to Patreon, then having your payment process separate from your host is still not going to protect you. Because as soon as you have a separate payment process, as soon as you ask people to subscribe to you there, that's going to be attacked. It just moves the target.
Everybody can be attacked. Everybody can be a target. That's for true. So you need somebody who has a resilient. So that's a requirement. You need a resilient payment processor and resilient platforms. And the question is, are there such things?
But you also have the issue of
it's a resilient payment platform. If whenever the government of the Americas deem it needed, they can remove the fact that you are a payment platform.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the problem is you have things like MasterCard and Visa, where if they're controlled by the U.S. government, if who they do business with is controlled by the U.S. government, that controls worldwide a certain amount of payment processing.
Well, and make no mistake, go watch those.
You just keep
I'm telling you right now, the FDIC listed out who it is that they had some control over, and your credit card processors are on the list. Right.
So what video is this? What are the links? We need the links.
There's
people.
I'm very bad at shilling myself.
Oh, it's on your channel. Well, now it's not time to be shy. You're not shilling yourself if you're not making money. So
I'm not. So
then you're not shilling anymore. You're just being confident and say, go watch it. So you put together a presentation basically on what's happening. Is that correct?
I did. So it's in both the side chat of the video and the YouTube chat, right? And all the things that I'm talking about here, I detail very methodically through these.
Can I post it in the main chat for you, Tuplet?
I already put the link to the.
You did it.
I already put the playlist in. YouTube, watch, blah 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 blah. That's the playlist that should bring you 4 videos.
So just a question now to Hannah again, because I think that one thing is to stick with the big platform as well, you know. So like Honey Badger Radio always stayed, as long as they could, on YouTube. And do you think it's viable for Cocoscopers to say, okay, we're going back to YouTube now, sorry, because we're still there, you know? I mean, Modwayne, you're still on YouTube, you're not banned. And Alicia, you're not banned on YouTube either. You may be demonetized, but at least you're not.
I was banned. I am banned. I am
yes,
banned.
you was. You made a new channel.
Yeah, but I'm concerned that I couldn't get into this chat. I'm actually concerned. Is my channel still up? Oh yeah.
Better check. Fuck.
I'm sorry.
To answer you though, we're on more than one thing. We're on BitChute, we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on platforms now that I don't actually know the list of, because Allison is always expanding, simply because we know this is going to happen. Like we know at some point, the ban hammer is going to come down, or the platform is going to take away our monetization, or something else is going to happen. So
it's obviously tough for a single person to do this. I mean, you guys are a team, so it's very hard to go on multiple platforms. But yes, I mean, Styx Hexenhammer does it as well. He always shills 3 or 4 platforms. I think that's a healthy thing to do anyway.
If you make pre-made videos, one thing to do, just hedge your bets. You upload it to each of your platforms.
Yeah.
You maybe have one that's the main platform that you promote, and in the low bar of that platform, you link to your channels on your other platforms and say, if something happens to this channel, this is where I am. This is where you'll find me. And don't worry if you don't get a bunch of views on the other platforms. It's about having other places to go if something happens to your main platform.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the features I really loved about Cocoscope. You could upload something by just entering the YouTube URL and it would sideload it. Just pull it over.
Well, I mean,
that is pretty neat.
This is true for a lot of platforms nowadays. I think BitChute and BitTube do that too, but I still upload it myself.
Oh, yeah, I always upload it.
Just one gripe about BitChute, I don't really see it as a YouTube hosting platform. It's more like a stuttering streams platform. It's just shit, I can't watch stuff there. Sorry.
That's a different story altogether.
That's no good. Like if the streaming doesn't work, it's
topic a little bit, because this is not about a commercial for different platforms. There are lots of platforms out there that are good. The reason why I wanted to start this talk, and the reason why you guys wanted to start this talk, was because of what was happening with Cocoscope. Now, I'm going to say something that I haven't said yet, and I haven't heard anyone else say, but I think the main reason, when I remember, for example, you and Alicia coming on during Old Fart's show, and that you were so upset, is because you didn't expect Cocoscope to do this. And
right.
I think this is another thing that we need to address, because I didn't expect Cocoscope to do this either, because when they started, they made very clear, no, we do not want to do what YouTube is doing. We want to be for free speech and all that. I don't know why they chosen not to take a stand. It could be because of what Don just said a moment ago, because it has been tried in the past and it failed.
Yeah. Well, it's this is how you have to think about it, okay? Each and every one of us has to survive in this world, right? Each and every one of us. So let's say that the government or a bank came to me right now and said, I have to pick between me or one of you people on this chat. Who am I going to pick? Who am I going to pick? Obviously, I'm going to pick myself, because I have to, because I got to take care of my kids. Yeah. Everybody is compromised. Everybody has a price. You know, there's very few people that are going to be willing to go the distance and keep going. And what they're doing right now is they're using, I swear, they're using Alex Jones as an example to what they're going to do with anybody that keeps trying. Fight back, we must. We have to.
Well, that's not true. They're not using Alex. Alex is just the modern day example, right? So we all focus on Alex because he was a big name, right? But there were so many, so long before Alex, and I mean years before Alex.
Oh, I know.
And so
Alex was the first really big one, though.
Well, so there was always a really big one, and they just keep making the big one bigger. And Alex Jones is just a well enough known name that we go, but he's the really big one. But tomorrow when it's PewDiePie, it'll be PewDiePie instead of Alex Jones that we go, well, they're talking about PewDiePie.
They won't take PewDiePie down yet.
Well,
and they can't. No, it's not about trying to, is that the powers that be know that if PewDiePie is taken down, it's going to cause a severe depression backlash among children, and they will have crossed the line. A lot of kids will start crying. You can't, as much as they love using kids, they know that too many young people are surviving their dystopian world by watching him. I don't know if you guys ever watch his Let's Play, but the little kids actually love PewDiePie. They treat him like he is their savior, and they need him around. So he's not going to be deplatformed, because of, if he is, a bunch of little kids are going to do something really horrible, and then it'll bring their whole house of cards down. So he's safe because the little kids like him.
He might also be safe because he doesn't challenge the establishment in a manner that is a genuine threat to the establishment right now.
No. Stop right now. This is an escalating process, right? So if you go back and look at the original Operation Choke Point stuff, they didn't start out deplatforming porn companies. They started with individual porn stars. And then they moved up to porn groups. And then they moved up to porn companies. And then they moved up to porn corporation names. It's the same walk that we're watching right now, right? So while there was previously some 500 user channels that nobody cared about, they got deplatformed. Then there were 5,000 user platforms that got deplatformed. Then 10, then 20, then Alex. It is the slow walk,
the slow boil,
acceptable to take down something of this size or smaller. And the next time it'll be somebody slightly bigger than Alex, and then it'll be acceptable to take down somebody that size or smaller, right? And by the way, in a strange way, this is why you see Black Pigeon Speaks, right? Because it's not so much the size of his channel, but how far he was from the mainstream. Is it okay to take that down? They're just expanding the circle. They're not. It's not that PewDiePie is safe because people love him. It's because they haven't made it acceptable to get rid of him yet.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
Another thing is, though, and I do think this is an important part, PewDiePie isn't political. I mean,
he is.
Make fun of feminism. He might make fun of silly stuff. But
To a point here.
He is actually political. I followed PewDiePie for a long time because I follow the people my kids follow, so I know what my kids are being told and taught, right? You want to know what your kids are. I follow everyone they follow. And I really like one of them. He's called like Jax something or another. He's very funny, great with grammar. Anyway, PewDiePie, when YouTube...
Jacksepticeye.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's called that. I don't ever remember their names, but they're there. I watch his videos. But anyway, when the YouTube, when they wanted to make Hillary Clinton win, right? And that really big guy had said, I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, and you need to tell everybody to do something on voting, who they're going to vote for, blah, 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 blah. Remember that big scandal? So, yeah, there was this big scandal where all the young ones were being told what to do. And PewDiePie, what he did is he didn't say anything, but he played a game where he was protecting Donald Trump. So he is political. He's
Thank you, Chad.
He's a smart political person.
Can I suggest that all of this is missing a thing, which is to say that everything is political to these people? These are the people who are running around saying the personal is political. So while poor old Hughes there probably is, for the most part, just playing video games and making a mockery of everything around him, because that's basically what Hughes does, he is doing personal things, and that, therefore, is political.
Well, and I would point out that statement, they haven't made it acceptable yet to go after him. I think that rings the most true in this situation. They tried. There was an effort to make it acceptable to go after PewDiePie, and it didn't work, in part because of how loved he is. And I think this goes back to the question of one of the reasons why the honey badgers hasn't been hit on the level of some of the other groups as well. It may not just be that we're too small for them to care about us. It may also be the fact that we're a group that is started and run by women. If you look at it, I've been listening to the names of the people that have been deplatformed and attacked get listed off. I didn't hear a single female name. There might be some. There might be some. But it is art. That's okay. Then you've been. But it is harder to go after us. It's harder to go after us because
Alicia,
people
you're an honorary
don't
man
want
guy.
to be. Yeah, you are. But they don't want to be viewed as picking on girls. It is easier for women to victim signal over something like this. So if you wanted to turn around and say, "Oh, look, they're silencing women," there are people that would listen to you just because you're a girl, and there are people that would listen to the accusation. It would be gross, but there are people that would listen to the accusation on the idea that you're being picked on because you're a girl, and you could convince people of that, and they would ignore the fact that most of the people this is happening to are guys. They're not going to target. They're not going to target gals unless they think they can really think they can get away with it, until it gets to the point where there's really nothing people can do about it.
Can I break in with a massive non sequitur for a moment?
Sure.
Hannah, you're that Hannah?
Yes. I guess. Yeah.
You're the honey badger Hannah?
Yeah, I'm the honey badger Hannah.
I had no idea. And
the famous people come to my stream.
I'm very bad at fangirling, but I'm going to try a little bit. Thanks for
Didn't the thumbnail give you a clue? It's a honey badger in her thumbnail.
Yeah, it did not even click with me until now.
Well, you're a sweetheart. But if you want me to not turn beet red and fry like it.
It's great how music brings people together. For some reason, I managed to pull in people like Hannah and Dr. Random Cam into my collaborations. It's fun. Well, here's a quick one.
Am I really soft though? Because every time I try to say something,
Yes, you're muted. Sorry. Go on.
No, back to the joke, because obviously Hannah is a big YouTuber, and I know, for example, John is a great fan of the honey badgers. So before Hannah joined the stream, or rather shortly after Hannah joined the stream, John and I were on Discord talking a little bit to each other as well, saying like, haha, Star Trek, hee. So, yeah, come on. I mean, I
don't like to think of myself as famous, so don't. It's paralyzing.
No, I'm not saying you guys are famous or anything. I absolutely appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you.
I would not in any way limit that appreciation. I am one of the very many people that you guys talk about in the abstract, those terrible stories that go on. And one of these days we'll probably be able to talk about that. But I'm still in court, so it ain't today.
I know how that is. A lot of times you can't talk about your case when you're in court. And the case that I wrote about for A Voice for Men, his lawyer wasn't happy about the coverage that the case got early after the case. Okay now, but the vexatious litigant made threats of more vexatious litigation. Big surprise, because she found the article. And so it's perfectly fair to not talk about your case until you know everything's really solidly settled.
Of course. Here's one thing I wanted to throw in, Ray, political stuff. You simply have to say you're not a feminist, and that's a political statement.
Exactly.
You know, that's enough to, that's a political statement. It's really weird, you know. I'm not a feminist. That makes you a politician. And it's kind of weird. It's something, you know, Hannah, the honey badgers would have to contest as well. You're basically based on a political statement in that sense. Would you agree? If that applies, you know.
Oh yeah. Everything that has to do with government policy or with law, how it applies to people, what civil rights are recognized, and so that's all political. And I hate when people say, well, I don't mean to get political, but, and then they make a statement on something that is entirely political. Your human rights, that's political. Your civil rights are based on your human rights, that's political. All of it's political. So yeah, we're political.
Right, after all.
A lot of people say that when what they really mean is, I'm not left-right political. And the stuff that we talk about, you can't pick a left or a right and say, well, this side has all the solutions because these sides cause all the problems. And the truth is, both sides cause all of the problems. Both sides have some things that could be feasible solutions if they would be better about recognizing civil rights equally. And you can't really adhere to either side and expect it to, or any side, and expect it to be a solution to that particular set of political issues. And it's going to be that way with a lot of things.
I apologize now for derailing this into a vague men's rights discussion. So the FDIC sucks.
No, it's don't feel bad, because that's the heart of the issue. And I found that out when I'm being silenced over trying to protect kids against pedophilia, and went down so far down the wormhole that I was starting to go crazy, really a little bit. And it drove me crazy that these females that were monsters getting away with it and just starting over. And then they had this backing and this money, and it's not even about men's rights. This damned human rights. Like, poor kids are just getting shit on because of what, I don't even know what the hell the feminists have done, but like my video yesterday when I was so angry that they cared more about adult women than little kids. And as a woman, I find that like appalling. Like, isn't that my job to protect kids? No, if I'm in a fire and you can only save me or a kid, you save the fucking kid. But the world is now, oh no, let the kid burn, get that chick, and make sure you're nice and get her a soda too. It's like, what the is going on?
Well,
It's
so can I suggest my line for that was right about the Clinton pedophile island thing? I mean,
might be, but there's another thing that's going on there, and it's I think political correctness has gone has created an inroad for pedo acceptance, for like we've got this hierarchy already where you have the progressive stack, but and Allison has pointed this out too, at every level of the progressive stack, women have their own little special section at the top of that level. And to the point where if you put a level that is above another level, if you compare those two levels, the women of the lower level will be treated nicer than the men of the level above them in a lot of ways. And in similar ways, they have less accountability. And so you have that lack of accountability. You're going to see female pedophiles getting away with things that male pedophiles won't. And then you also have that inroad in political correctness where they're trying to say, well, it's a sexuality and you guys all need to recognize that we can't help it. And what else is it they say? That there's they call themselves non-offending and they want an outlet that doesn't directly affect children. And you have those guys coming in and saying, we're not bad, we're just drawn that way, or basically, and there are people accepting that, and that's creating a further inroad.
Wait till the DSM-6 comes out, ladies and gentlemen.
They're taking
the DSM-6 comes out. I am terrified. It's coming out in 2020. The guy that was part of writing the DSM-5, he actually started protesting against the 2020 because the team that's putting it together was brought in for a more diverse look at it. They already stated if the DSM-6 says that pedophilia is a sexuality based off of all the hard work that everybody did, then you will hire an open pedophile at schools. You will have to hire. It's so disgusting and disturbing. And we're all being silenced, and we've got to figure out a way to stop it because I keep getting shut down. I will always stand back up, but what happens if they cut up my credit card?
Can I say two things here?
Mm-hmm.
One, my line was Clinton and Pedophile Island. Not that was some objective line. That was the moment I went, what in the hell is going on? And two, can I suggest that this is once again a non-governmental group that can do whatever the hell it wants that influences government policy? Because if the people who write the DSM determine that not only is it okay to have sex with children, but you should gut them and wear them as a hat, then you can't discriminate against them per U.S. government policy. And that's the most ridiculous thing in the world, and yet it's true.
Well,
it is true.
There's a second thing that I have a problem with, according to the DSM-5, and don't get me wrong, because I had this conversation not too long with a colleague, and for the few of you out there who don't know this yet, I am a social therapist within a psychiatric hospital, so it is my line of work. And we were talking about it, and the problem I have with the DSM-5, and I believe you when you say the DSM-6 will be worse, the DSM-5 is already written along the political correct lines. For the longest time, when we work in psychiatry, the rule of thumb is do not go along with the paranoia or the hallucinations of the client or patient, because it's their misguided sense of reality. They are there to be helped with that, not to be enforced in it. And now we say that gender dysphoria isn't a problem anymore. And I'm like, how the fuck is that possible?
Oh, it's getting worse. You know what?
Well, I think the reason for transitioning was supposed to be that dysphoria is a problem, and people were suicidal because of it.
Which actually isn't true. Because if that were the case, then the suicide rate amongst transgenders post-operation would be lower. But we see absolutely no evidence for that. If that were true, then the acceptance of society would lower the suicide rates. For example, we saw this with homosexuality. Once homosexuality was accepted by society in general, suicide numbers amongst homosexuals actually plummeted. We don't see this with transgenders. The problem is deeper.
All right, well, let's wait. We're going to go off topic, and this is such an important topic because this is why we want to talk about deplatforming, so we can continue to talk about these.
Yeah, that's one right there. There was a scientist, and I cannot, off the top of my head, think of his name, but basically the guy that wrote the primarily accepted work on gender dysphoria was deplatformed because trenders who have basically stepped all over people who are transgender didn't like what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have a problem. So two plebs, you seem up on it. What is the solution? Can we get a payment processor in, say, like North Korea, maybe, because they don't have a central bank? Would that make it so that they couldn't shut us down? How do we proceed?
Russia.
They have a central bank. They're compromised.
Here's your problem.
Okay.
There is no correct answer as long as the FDIC controls what banks and payment processors can do. Now, because banks have to be insured by the FDIC, you can't be a bank, you can't be a payment processor, you can't be peripherally attached to any of those things, as long as the FDIC controls monetary transfers, or the FDIC says, okay, we don't like you, enough is enough.
But the FDIC only covers, what, 250,000? So does that mean...
they only cover 250,000 banks. They cover
money.
320 million people.
No, I think she was talking a dollar amount. The first 250,000.
Exactly. So do they not? If I transfer $300,000, this is what I'm just asking. Like, I'm trying to figure this out. If I transfer 300,000, only 250,000 is covered by the FDIC, right?
So herein is your problem. The entry point is that first $250,000, right? So for your bank to be a bank, they have to have the first $250,000 insured. After that, it is in fact on you. However, to accept the payment, regardless of size, they have to have the $250,000 insurance. And the only insurance company in the game is the FDIC. That's just rules of banking in the US. So if they want to accept transfers of any size, regardless of size, they have to have FDIC insurance for the first $250,000. And if they're a business-related account, you have to have a higher number, right? So your private account is only insured up to $250,000, but business accounts are insured up to something like $1 million or $2 million or something like that.
They're a private company?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. So they're a private company. Does that mean that there could be a different insurance company that could be used?
Technically speaking, yes. However, the way U.S. laws are written at the current time, the only insurance company that is authorized to distribute insurance that permits you to be a bank is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
And so they're just as bad as having one central bank, but this is going beyond that because they're even worse because they're like a further back choke point where whoever is running the FDIC rules everything basically.
Right.
You got it.
And so the situation is there are a whole lot of temporary measures that can be taken. We can diversify our platforms. We can present a moving target. We can use Bitcoin. We can use foreign banks. We can do all these other things, but you have the FDIC controlling things like MasterCard and Visa. And if they tell MasterCard you can't do business with Patreon, if Patreon allows Sargon of Akkad to have a platform, then MasterCard tells Patreon, you can't have Sargon of Akkad or we won't do business with you. And all the people that pay you through us will no longer be able to do business with you. And the next thing you know, Patreon is either choosing to dump Sargon or they're choosing to dump MasterCard. Well, MasterCard is where they get their money. so they're not going to dump MasterCard. Bye Sargon, and that's basically what that's happened with more than one entity through.
So who pays
Patreon.
the FDIC? Who is paying the FDIC?
You live in the United States? Do you live
Is
in
it
the
my
United
tax dollars? Is it my damn tax dollars?
You and
I am
we
literally,
are paying.
I am
I would
literally
love-
paying the fuckers that are
Better,
silencing me.
yes, you are paying the fuckers that are
So-
shutting you down.
I would love if the payment processors would refuse to pay the FDIC.
Oh, that would be amazing. But
Yeah.
hold on. There are two methods in which the FDIC gets paid. One is direct federal tax dollar subsidization, and two is the federal mandate that each bank that is a bank pays insurance on their deposits. It happened at the exact same time the FDIC was created, quote, created, right? And so there is, much like if you live in the U.S., you're required to have car insurance, except when they did this with bank insurance, they said this one entity, that's the insurance that you have to have. And so subsequently, if you don't have FDIC insurance per federal law, you're not a bank. You can be a credit union. However, there is effectively an FDIC for credit unions.
Yeah.
It's
I have
not
a credit
as big
union
of a
account.
deal because credit unions aren't as big of a deal as regular banks. However, as far as I can tell, we've already started with the FDIC equivalent of credit union insurance. And so even if we all move to credit unions tomorrow, all we're doing is delaying this by a year. And that's
So,
that's the best
but
case.
Yeah, and if
okay,
you've ever
so-
paid a banking fee, then your money has gone to the FDIC as well.
Okay, so I do
they
have
take a
credit
5%
union accounts. So would there be a way of, if everybody did migrate over to the credit unions, but is there a way to where take away the power of centralized insurance, like to make it more insurance, like car insurance? Is there a possibility of doing that where each person has to pay for their own insurance?
It'd have to be legislated, because that's
But it
how
is
this was created. But it's possible to do it. It would have to be legislated, and then it would have to go back to. Do you know how hard things have been to have one outsider in Washington, one outsider in the swamp? Donald Trump has been put through all of the investigations that he's been put through, all of the attacks that he's been put through, the mainstream media or establishment media, because they're not really mainstream, they're not in line with the rest of the population, has attacked him. So what we'd be looking at is we would actually need in the United States a sort of a revolution in terms of the electorate voting in more and more people who are as much outsiders as Donald Trump. They don't all have to be like, I think he really just falls into the category of conservative. But they don't all have to be conservatives. They have to not be a swamp establishment, basically, in order to get this changed.
This is interesting, though, because this is basically, if we go back in American politics, if we look, for example, at people like John F. Kennedy, because there's a lot of stories going around, and one of the main stories being pushed is that he was killed by the deep state because he was against the federal bank. Now, guess where this is all tied in?
Yeah, no shit.
It's too much power. So basically, like, this is really, really depressing, because I thought we only had to worry about the Feds owning all the money, but now we're talking about another private entity that owns all the insurance that owns all the money.
Yeah.
So we have two big, huge corporations, and then at the same time, oh my God! All right,
There's a lot of work to do.
I'm sad. I'm gonna go take a smoke break, everybody, because that's some deep shit. That's depressing.
And this is why at the beginning of the stream I said, let's not start bashing Cocoscope, because they aren't to blame. I mean, they are in an impossible position. Now, what could they do? I think what they could do is look for payment providers outside of the United States, for example, like Subscribestar. But yeah, that won't be easy. it's not an easy fix. As I said, if we look at Gab had to look at different different monetization thingies. I mean, one of the reasons Gab nearly lost it was not because they couldn't get people to join in, or they couldn't even hire platforms to put their thingy on, because
no, they got deplatformed across the board, and they also got payment platform. Like nobody would transfer, and to date, you have to send a payment directly to them in order to, like, if you want to support Gab, they don't have advertising. They don't have any way for you to you can't use MasterCard, you can't use PayPal, you can't use Patreon, you can't use Visa or anything like that. You have to actually physically send them a check.
Yes.
Or send them a check through your bank's electronic checking system. And that will eventually be taken away from them, because that is what the banks do in this situation.
Yeah. Well, so this is the shtick. I think a lot of where Gab is still getting traction is that they're probably using a credit union. I have no evidence of that, but that's my assumption, because they haven't been deplatformed at the account level. Well, they were once and complained about it, and then said they fixed it, but they didn't say how.
Right.
And so the general method of deplatforming at the bank level is the FDIC. And if the FDIC deplatformed them at large at banks, then they didn't just move from Chase to Wells Fargo. They moved from Chase to Bob's Credit Union or whomever. And the credit unions aren't directly susceptible to this except through payment processors. And so as long as you're using direct account-to-account transfers and not their name, then you're probably okay. And that's probably the method that they solve this. However, once again, if that gets popular, all we're doing is delaying this by a year or two.
And what's eventually going to happen, what I predict is eventually going to happen with Gab, and I hate to say this because I really wanted that platform to succeed, is that Chase and Wells Fargo are eventually going to say, we will not transfer funds to that account because of who owns it. You can use your money, but you can't take it there and spend it.
Yes, done that. I mean, there are people who have already. I mean, not even political people that have lost their bank accounts because of guilt by association. Really.
Yes.
Is it possible to set up proxies as workaround, like for money? Just to go through a few hands.
Well, so here's the problem, right? So if you set up a bank, presumably, right, and that bank was transferring to accounts that were verboten, as it were, that bank would be deplatformed by the FDIC. If you set up a credit union that was transferring money to places that were verboten, the FDIC would deplatform bank transfers to that credit union. So yes, however, best of luck. I mean,
everything is going to be nothing but a delaying tactic until the FDIC issue gets addressed. Yeah. That's the bottom line. And it sucks that that's the way it is, but that is the way it is.
Okay, so then back to the initial question, and I know Alicia tried to get me back on this a few times as well. What can we say to Cocoscope? What can they do to...
what can we say to Cocoscope? Let me just
nothing.
I'm sorry that you got screwed. I understand where you are. You're not the first. The adpocalypse began on YouTube because of the exact same problems that you're having. Some of us understand what's going on. The vast majority of us don't. I hope you find some method that none of us have understood or foreseen to be able to fix this problem.
I really feel sorry for Cocoscope, to be honest, because this is absolutely not what they want. I mean, if it's a small email, so it's very possible that they lied to me, but I really don't have the feeling they want to do this.
I don't think they lied to you. I'm not involved at Cocoscope and have no idea, their history or any of that. But what they are describing has happened over and over again. Yeah. So it's not new. And
But-
it's
And could
not,
we just
it's
redefine?
not likely
we-
for a platform like them to exist without eventually having it happen to them too.
We'll just redefine political content as porn and maybe just call it adult
Well,
content.
that's no, that's the
Welcome to the
We're
real
talking about a
problem
soft
here.
porn. We're talking about a soft porn platform that has open doors to everything, and
Well, you know,
it's not
What?
the soft porn that's the problem.
One of the very first targets of Operation Choke Point was porn stars. So I hope that's not your plan.
It's just
there's
it's
a
more
lot of people that
acceptable
have been talking
now. You
about
know,
uploading to
porn is more
RedTube.
acceptable than right-wing thought by now, right?
Well, you don't even have to be right wing. Oh, okay, I know everyone left of Pol Pot is everyone right of Pol Pot is a right winger, but you don't have to be right wing. But it's funny though, because how many people are talking about? Well, you know what? I have an account on Pornhub now where I have uploaded videos. How many YouTubers have gone to Pornhub? And I wonder how safe they are.
As customer,
We found one, Rational Outlaw.
Well, there were more. Trust me, there are more.
No, but
I
no,
looked into it.
no, we found what Real and I were talking. We found one when we did a safe for work search, and it was Rational Outlaw doing
Yeah, not
political
Yeah,
videos.
I've seen. I forgot his name of the channel. A bunch of channels based on firearms. I
Yeah,
forgot.
Rational Outlaw was political.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about just political. I'm talking about people who went to Pornhub to get away from. Oh, did Pornhub kicked off the gun channels? Okay, that must have been happening after I checked it then.
what did they kick off somebody?
Apparently, Pornhub kicked off gun channels.
Oh, guns. Okay.
I believe it. Look, guns are always verboten, and I'm a big gun fan. So, I mean,
Yeah, they're easy to target, though.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
No
Because
pun intended.
what
Well, maybe. Yeah,
It-
people are scared of guns.
right? Like
Yeah.
guns are evil. They're just there to kill people. Let me tell you right now, it's been a sweet hot minute since I killed anybody with a gun, and I go shooting with on a regular basis. And when I say that, I mean I was an active duty United States Marine, and it was my job to kill people with a gun.
Don, you don't get the point, mate. It's not you killing people; it's your gun.
Exactly.
So it's only because you hold the gun there safe. Otherwise,
Right.
if you put your
Hey,
gun.
A gun will turn you into a woman.
That's the shtick right there, right? So like I am quite literally scheduling a day to walk into the forest by myself and go shooting right now, in the world of convenient timing. Why? I find it very relaxing. And so the simple fact of the matter is that that's not acceptable to the powers that be. Chad is telling me that CNC Arsenal, something I don't know, Iraq Veteran 8888, Military Arms Channel, were all kicked off Pornhub. And
shit.
so the ones that I named, if you're into guns, those are big names.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, I haven't checked it for a long time, obviously, and people might not believe me, but I don't actually go often to Pornhub.
So the question is, would it be? It wouldn't be a safe haven for political content either, would it?
No,
Probably not. No.
Well, I mean,
As soon
I
as
thought
the
it was,
feds
but
decided that it
considering
would
that people are being kicked,
Sorry, Mon.
I thought it would be, but considering that they are kicking people,
Well, therein is the shtick, right? Is that porn, while societally acceptable in 2014, is now closer to untouchable. And so you can't just go fuck with porn, basically. Right? But you can go, guns are evil, dear Pornhub, stop it.
yeah, it's funny or worrying actually. But
Yes.
Maybe could you maybe do like a hybrid thing and have political opinions and having a 1 minute trailer before it with some feminist porn? just try to think out of the box, outside of the box.
You mean like the German government?
90 seconds of lesbian porn. Then
Yes.
No, the German government wanted to make its own porn.
yeah,
Yes, that's right.
Oh boy, government porn. That's going to be.
Well, lesbian porn is.
Lesbian porn is amongst the most popular.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all right by me. All the heteros watch lesbian porn. Who would like to watch a dick waved around, you know?
Can we all just agree that government porn is basically just standing in line?
There you go. You don't get to find out what's at the front of the line. You just, you know.
Isn't it great that we arrived at this topic now?
Well, as we all talk about the faith platform.
Yeah, but I do feel sorry for Cocoscope, and I remember that when you guys started talking and you were all angry and all that, I'm like, I really feel sorry for Cocoscope. This is not what they set out to be. And I had hoped they would make a stand, but at the same time, I can understand that they don't.
But who feels sorry for the content creators? That's the question.
Well, my husband said, of course they weren't going to make a stand because she's French.
No, she's Canadian. She's
They don't
actually
believe in
Canadian.
freedom.
She's Canadian,
Wow.
Toxic.
Whew. God, that's murder.
Is she?
French. She's French Canadian.
No, but she's Canadian.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same
No, it's
thing.
not. It's
Yes,
Canada.
it is.
No, it's
No.
Wait.
So she's
They're
not
both
going to
American.
guillotine.
and apologize for it, is what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying is that
Apologize.
no, I'm just saying is that the fact I was shocked that she did it, but not so much. I was shocked because she really was helping my channel out. She's a very nice lady. I really liked her. She's got a bright head on her shoulders. But again, it's this war that we're fighting is something that humanity has been doing since the dawn of time. There's never been free speech, and people are repelled by it. They really are, but both on the left and the right. You can see that. And I do like to bring up this example because I will have people attack me over it, but they want to pass a law to make it illegal to burn the flag.
Oh yeah, Trump.
And while I understand that people get upset over that, they're crying out for it. The same people bitching about this censorship are crying out about it. Or another example, there's this, he is more right wing. He always bitching about being censored, and he was censored. And yet he did a video today on an Uber driver refusing to drive a girl to an abortion clinic. And so
who was that?
I can't think of his name. He's got brown hair. He's short.
Philly D.
No, not I won't watch Philly D.
I know.
I banned him a long time ago for what
Just
he
joking.
said. But they do the exact same thing, or they want to James Aslip, thank you. Both sides screech for censorship. Now, I don't mind censorship for under 18. I think that's perfectly legitimate because kids cannot consent and we need to protect kids. But the problem is that this is a bigger issue. It's a bigger societal issue because most of the people that cry out for free speech now were people that were silencing, like the porn king. They were the very same people that were silencing Married with Children. They were the very same people that were silencing the MTV guy. I can't think of his Andrew Dice Clay. And so we're just flipping back and forth. So the only way that we're ever really going to create change, if you think about it, if you really think about the best way to make change, is that we have to start, unfortunately, with the children, and we need to teach them the value of free speech. And until that day comes, this cycle is just going to be bouncing back and forth. You know, it's now the religious people that are being persecuted, but it wasn't that long ago that the religious people would have, you know, been killing people on the left. And then now the left gets the power, so now they're going to kill the people on the right. So I think that the reason why it's so traumatic for all of us is that we see underneath all the BS companies and shit like that, it doesn't matter. Even if the FDIC was to shut down tomorrow, it would still happen because there is something fundamentally wrong in human society where we crave silencing opposition.
It's not.
Well, there's an underlying thing under what you're talking about, and that is this idea that if you divide the population into two groups, you have the smart group and the dumb group, right? And the people that think they're in the smart group think of the people they think of as being in the dumb group as their burden. These people are our burden. It's our job to protect them from themselves and each other. And it's our right and responsibility to control everything they do because we're smarter and better than they are. And that is what we're looking at in terms of everybody wants to put themselves in the smart group. Well, humanity is not divided into a smart group and a dumb group that way. Humanity is basically divided into people who are willing to sacrifice their and other people's freedom for the perception of security and people who are not.
Can I just suggest that there is, in fact, one rather specific book that has been created that describes this problem in absolute certainty, and it is called A Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell. Either some particular group knows better than everyone else and should be listened to, and you're too stupid to know how to live your life, or maybe you should be allowed to screw up on occasionally, and maybe you'll have to put up with your own problems, and maybe you'll have to deal with the consequences of your actions, and maybe that won't always be perfect, and maybe we don't like what happens to you, but the simple fact of the matter is you should be free to screw up because freedom requires shitty consequences.
It's true, and that's what we're up against. So we're beating our head against the wall.
Okay, so I've been pondering this from an evolutionary perspective for a very long time, and there is the evolutionary pressure to group conformity or authoritarianism, and there is also an evolutionary pressure, a lesser one, to individualism. And so this tendency is an evolutionary one. That's the fundamental problem. We can't get rid of it because it is constantly there. It will always be there. It's part of our natures. The point is to understand it and cope best with it than to bemoan it, because it's not going anywhere. It's always happened. It always will happen.
Jesus, let us all become nihilists right now. The only solution is your left hand and your right hand. Let's go do it.
No, but you have to understand reality and on our natures.
Become Buddhist. Buddhist. You need to be.
It is true that battle is always going to happen. And one of the things that basically just means is that we can never shut up about it.
So
we just keep
kind of the quote of what's his name? The robber baron quote. I forgot his name now. Bloody hell.
Literally anything about the robber barons is false. So carrying on.
No, he means that I'd rather be ruled by a robber baron than somebody who means well or something.
over the do-gooder, because the robber baron may be satiated, but the do-gooder wakes up every morning with a clear conscience and moral drive to do it. Yeah, it's true. It's like everybody acts like they're fucking mommy, and it drives me crazy. Like that pisses me off more than anything. When the way that I was treated, when I decided to homeschool and be a stay-at-home mom because I could make so much money and I'm so fucking smart. I lost family members. I lost friends because they said I was a fucking traitor to females, when I was like, bitches, my allegiance is to my children. Isn't that what being a female is?
Yeah. No. And you make a massive mistake in what amounts to the gender wars there, right? Or the victim wars, which the gender wars were sort of in origination of victim wars. This premise that I will take care of me and mine is anathema to everything that goes on. And therefore, what you end up and look in this, the men's rights activists were always correct, which is to say that this basic idea that there are these huge victims, and if only we took care of the victims, then everything would be okay, is the problem. Because you can't have this idea of the FDIC. You can't have them policing what's good for you, stupid pleb, without the idea that there are these victims. And the first victims were, in fact, women. And every other victim ideology has been based on that idea. And look, I know, put down slaves. Yeah, I get it, but black women had a bigger problem than black men even after slavery, according to all these progressive idiots. And this victim ideology did come from somewhere, and it was our love of women and wanting to give them things and wanting to make them happy with, regardless of how much they worked or did or produced or whatever.
And funny enough, in the old days, and talking pre-medieval, there was a saying basically boiling down to this: beware of women giving counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason that message came. It's not because women shouldn't be heard. It's not that women have no right to speak, but women tend to speak from a certain point of view. Now, where Alicia says, as a woman, I feel it my duty to provide as good as I can for my children, this is absolutely true. The problem is that moral busybodies consider everyone their child, but they basically have motivation behind it. You have to do what I tell you because I'm only telling you for your own good.
Exactly.
Yeah, they believe they're the mother of everybody. That's the problem.
It's gross. And then the way
That
they
is gross.
treat their husbands, they emasculate their husbands all the time and treat them like children. And it's so gross. And I just feel like society has gone down this weird, grotesque path of just this weird Oedipus thing where women are turning into their husband's mom, and it's gross.
But
I
it's
don't
also,
treat my husband that way. I think it's wrong. He's a man, and I want him to be a damn man. If I wanted a woman, I'll marry a damn woman.
I think it's also a deeply anti-eugenic idea that something can replace a mother, or like any kind of parent, that you can replace this, and that it's unimportant, that you can, like, for instance, you can solve the world's problems by stopping getting children and let other people get children for you. It's a deeply anti-eugenic. It's not eugenic, it's actually anti-eugenic, because you basically stop evolution. You just stop it.
It's a eugenicist argument. The question is what angle it applies, because the same people who say, right, eugenics are bad, say, dear white people, stop breeding, stop the blackens. It's just eugenics from a different angle. So,
I mean, if you do a eugenics, you have to do it from the perspective of the gene, as in the procreator, right?
Exactly. So we attribute eugenics to Hitler, but the reality is all it says is that the progenitor is good in some fashion. And so while you have a group of people going, dear white people, stop breeding, adopt black children, that's eugenics.
Yeah. Can I say one thing? I think the progenitor is not good or bad, but he's right. Because evolution is based on you get your shot at progenitation, but your descendants might die or not survive, and evolution regulates that. So you're not good or bad; you're just right.
Well, in that you're talking about a lot of societal impact on what particular breeding habits should mean.
Yeah.
And in that, the progenitor isn't necessarily correct or right. I mean, if we all suddenly decided that 900-pound fat men who earn $50 a month were in fact the correct people to breed with, I mean, it's not going to suddenly promote the species, but
in other words, the progenitor
again, it's not a moral. It's not a moral. Sorry. it's not a moral argument.
Viewing himself as right, or the eugenicist having a particular idea of what is the right progenitor. That's is that basically what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is that. Oh, sorry, were you asking me or Johnny?
Sort of both of you, because I think you're
okay. So my perspective is really that of JP. That is that evolution is right, and if evolution at the moment tends to breed more like lower IQ people, then it's right in that way as well. Because if you need to adapt to be, let's say, less political and more dumb in order to survive, then that is the correct way to survive. Whether you find that morally reprehensible or not is not even an argument.
You're talking about two different things now.
Yeah, and that was exactly what I was going to get at. So the question of correct is somewhat subjective, because the answer of what is correct is subjective. And so presumably evolution will breed, at least in the world of humans, who rely almost exclusively on their mind to be able to survive. And if you don't think so, we're on the internet, so I'm going to use that as evidence that you're wrong. But
we still are on the internet, still.
Right. We're currently on the internet. But more the point is that the internet exists. But humans clearly rely on their ability to think, reason, and create tools in some variety to be the top of the food chain. And if you were to take that away from humans, well, I mean, let's face it, every tiger on Earth kills us all, and we all just die out. Because let's face it, they're better killers than we are. And so presumably the idea of whether or not you're a better evolutionary species is both tied to he who has problem-solving skills, at least in the world of women selecting, he who has problem-solving skills, and he who has what we would generally consider better genetics. The most ideal person would be your Mensa member nerd who has square pecs.
No, I disagree. Sorry, it's not he who has the problem-solving skills alone. It can also be he who is able to socialize with somebody who knows somebody who has the problem-solving skills. You see, it's a lot more about social intelligence.
No,
Spend
I'm sorry.
time with social intelligence.
I'm going to interrupt the both of you now, because you are talking past one another and basically you're saying the same thing.
Okay.
Being able to solve problems with social skills still means you have problem-solving abilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're talking past each other and you're both trying to say the same thing, but in a slightly different way. Or rather,
not exactly.
You're kind of disagreeing with it whilst agreeing with him.
Maybe.
Yes. No, I'm not inherently disagreeing. I'm saying, and I can't believe I'm going to say this word, there's more nuance.
Hey!
Dirty word.
I haven't used it today, but that's my word.
Yeah, exactly. and so look, the premise of baser ideals of breeding is where the square pecs come in, right? So clearly you have good genes if you're a guy when you're 6 feet tall and your pecs are the size of the average Volkswagen Bug. And so, like you're over there, you're crushing not only beer cans but kegs with your pecs. And from there, we know that you have good genes as a genetic bodily preference. Now, the question from there is whether or not you're intelligent enough to problem solve one way or another. Now, to be fair to what Modwayne was talking about, the societal ability to problem solve depends at least a little on whether or not your pecs can crush a keg. Because let's face it, no one's arguing that Brad Pitt can't talk to people. And the simple fact of the matter there is that he is Brad Pitt physically.
Yeah, I mean that's right at the core of the problem. He's an actor, so if you can pretend, then that's probably good enough.
No. That's not what I mean. Brad Pitt is an actor, but Brad Pitt's an actor because Brad Pitt is genetically, physically blessed, right? There are, I mean, in various ways, you could argue that Danny DeVito is a better actor than Brad Pitt, and yet Brad Pitt will always be.
I'm going to interrupt this because we are so far off topic that I want to say, you know what, we're not going to go back to the topic. Or the two of you have to admit that you are both saying the same thing, but you just say it's slightly different than the other guy, and now you want the other guy to agree with you.
No, I don't want them to agree. I enjoy the
with it as well, because you don't want to anyway, and basically you are saying the same thing. It's an interesting topic, don't get me wrong, but it's not what we were talking about. Unless we say, okay, you know what, we're done with the Cocoscope thing. Let's talk about other fun stuff. We can do that too.
No, you're totally right. Real and I are arguing very small ideas under a massive umbrella.
Yeah. It's true. I don't know. I mean, I just don't think we're gonna reach a solution anyway for the Cocoscope debacle. You know, as in, go to platform X and use Y as your money. Your money handling platform or whatever. One thing that John also suggested, which I thought was very a cool idea, was to have the subscription the subscription mechanism be something that's not handled by a platform or not by the same platform that hosts your videos, so that if they ban you, you still are subscribed. You know, that I think that would be a fantastic idea if the subscription system was decoupled from everything else. So you have a mailing list and a database, and that pretty much like self-contained and cannot be threatened. You know, that'd be a fantastic idea if somebody like more technical than us could come up with a solution for that. I don't know, maybe it exists. I don't know. So I think we have to keep searching, guys, you know, unless you want to go back to YouTube.
Well, we can search, but I think Hannah has to go, and I have to go.
I gotta take off. So
yeah.
Well, considering the time, normally I would end the stream like 15 minutes ago. I usually go on till 1:30. So maybe this is a good time to call it quits. Anyone have any last famous words they want to share with the audience?
I do.
Thanks for having us.
We all do. I'll start. Remember, everybody, I have my own website, EliciaClegg.com. It's not going anywhere. I've been very careful with everything I do on that. So every time I get censored somewhere, just go there, and it'll tell you where to find me. That's it. That's all I have.
Who will be the next one?
In relation to what we talked about tonight, I recommend people, in terms of the political correctness thing, I recommend people look up. There's a YouTube video of the interview. Actually, there's several YouTube videos of the interview. A KGB dissenter, an agent who defected back in the 80s, Yuri Bezmenov, was interviewed, and he talked about some of the methods that propagandists use and political methods of mind control and everything. I don't think necessarily that you could trace what's going on today directly back to the Russians or anything like that, but they're using the same methods. And a lot of what's happening today was predicted in that interview.
Is that the same guy who was on the New York Times big wall of my descent to the alt-right?
No, actually, this is from. He's not even alive anymore. Actually, He was, and his death happened under suspicious circumstances.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's also there's a blog that actually has a transcript of this. The blog post is actually called "Interview with Yuri Bezmenov," and then there's part 1, 2, and I think 3 and 4. And it's a Blogspot blog. And if you look up "useless dissident interview with Yuri Bezmenov," you can read it. And I think people should familiarize themselves with
there are several
basically what he's talking about.
It is an honestly
online as well. I mean, you can watch. I mean, I think he had interviews with several American broadcasts as well. Yeah. So
you look him up, because it'll help you understand a lot of what's going on here. And the stuff that's happening with the FDIC is happening because people who were influenced in the way that he has described are now in positions of power in the government and have been entrenched in government for an entire generation.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So that's my last
I haven't
statement.
seen that one. That's brilliant.
this is also not about the Russians. I mean,
No, it's not about the Russians. It's about a method of
The commies.
attack.
This is how you influence a society.
Yeah. Get them while they're young.
Yeah, the Bezmenov angle is a pretty good one. And then, obviously, I come back with saying, haha, you see, the Bolsheviks, because... but I'm not going to do that now. Anyone else wanted to say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
If nobody else has real, go ahead.
Yeah, just me. I was fairly depressed today. I have no friends in real life, so I'm really happy to come back into the world of communication via this way. I thoroughly enjoyed this night's stream. Let's hope there's more like this.
Well, you are often welcomed. You know that. Well, you're often welcome. You're always welcome.
Thanks.
I mean, yeah.
Well, hey, Real. I mean, if nobody else will talk to you, I generally live under the policy I'll talk to everybody. So come on down basically anytime. That said, I can't explain how much what Hannah just said is correct. If you go listen to the Bezmenov interviews, it's if you have any ability to compare what is currently going on in life with what he is saying, it's I don't want to say shaking to your core, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, it is. I think I've made a small video using part of the Bezmenov interview as well. It's breathtaking that this was out on public television and people still don't know about it.
Yes, I mean it's
education, that's for sure.
It's unsettling at best, and a lot of what we're experiencing right now. And the more you get interested in history, the more of it that you see, specifically fairly modern history, and it's very, again, unsettling at best because you can watch what he said. Sometimes, it depending on which interviews you catch with him, back to the 40s or 50s, I think. And he says, look, this is going to happen. And then he very accurately predicts, maybe not the specific the way that it happened, but the method in which these things happen. And it's very, well, you'll want to drink. That's all I'm saying. And so, look, there's not a time in probably since 1939 U.S. history, depends on what country you're in, but somewhere in that vicinity, where those interviews aren't relevant and relative to what's going on in your country. It's very telling, I guess, is the way. And there's a real reality that you get called a conspiracy theorist for this. I do occasionally over the Operation Choke Point stuff. And yet at the same time I go, well, but there's a fact pattern and a method, and it's being followed again. And somehow that doesn't matter. Anyway, that all said, thanks, everybody. I know some of us have disagreed on various ways, and it's all been trying to explain to each other, and it's been great. And I cannot imagine any other situation, truth be told, where this worked out quite the way it did. So thanks, Mod Wayne, for orchestrating.
Well, as always, and I'm going... Actually, John, did you want to say something, mate?
Me? No, I've loved listening, mate.
All right. Well,
as
always... Oh, sorry, go on.
That's just a snide comment on John. I said for a change.
All right. Anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. This was a very good conversation. It was useful. Now, I know we didn't find the solution for Cocoscope or any of the other platforms, but sometimes recognizing that there is a problem is far more important than already having an answer ready. I hate it when people assume that just be able to say that there is a problem, you also should have the answer, because if you don't have the answer, you have no right to say that there's a problem. But you can't find a problem, you can't find an answer if you're not even clear on what the problem is. We had a very good talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Hannah, for joining us the first time. Hopefully not the last, but who knows?
No, I'd be happy to be here again sometime.
If
Necessarily get to do it very much, though. I just happen to be free tonight.
Well, we always have a live stream on Wednesday, and this is the smallest corner of the YouTube, obviously, but we talk about all sorts of things, and feminism does tend to traverse this field from time to time. And I mean, considering you're one of the honey badgers, that might be more interested to you, though. I have to admit, I invited Don because of his knowledge on the FDIC, but you seem to be very well informed on that as well. So,
not quite as much as he is, but I have looked into it partly because of, largely because of how it's affected the people around me. So yeah, it would be fun.
Yeah, I only looked into it because Don linked it in one of our discussions. Well, not our discussion, but one of the discussions on the Twitter group. And I mean, I know a little bit about it now. So
engage.
Well, that's the great thing about being able to do this is we learn so much from each other, and information gets passed around, and people look into things, and that helps sort of direct what we need to do what the next steps are, what activism we have to get involved in. And like my perspective on this is that it's going to take citizen pushback against the political establishment through contacting your representatives and choosing who your representatives are going to be. And that's going to be a hard, slow process. And I just, without being able to do stuff like this, we can't get that process started. So I'm just glad to be able to get involved in different streams and stuff when I can, just because it's the information sharing is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And having said that, I mean, for those who want to hang out in the after stream, I more than welcome you. But that's not something for the people in the chat, because this is where I'm going to say bye-bye. And I hope to see you all next time. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I saw a few people that I don't see often, or I even saw a few people I never see. Always fun. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. And hopefully we'll see you next Saturday when the old fart and the older fart are talking about whatever. And next Wednesday when we will have another topic, but as of yet, undisclosed. See you all next time.